You can order the CV axle used in the video on CarParts.com via the link in the description. Turn your engine off and set the parking brake. Remove the central rim cover to access the nut on the end of the transmission. Use a breaker bar and a 32mm socket to unblock the nut on the end of the transmission. Before lifting your vehicle, it is necessary to measure the distance between the center of your wheel and the wheel arch. This will allow you to achieve an optimal tightening of the parts in their initial position. Loosen the stud bolts on the front wheels. Lift the front of your vehicle. We strongly suggest watching our video on how to jack your Honda Accord safely before carrying out this step. Place the vehicle on the jack stands. In order to change the CV axle on your vehicle, you will need to take off the wheels to have full access. Don't forget to put the wheels under the vehicle. Brush the nut of the bolt holding the strut fork to the lower control arm. Then spray it with penetrating oil. Use a 17mm wrench, a ratchet, and a 17mm socket to unscrew the nut of the retaining bolt. Once unscrewed, you can use a pin punch to remove the bolt. You can then disengage the strut fork from the control arm. It is also necessary to engage the sway bar end link from the lower control arm. Using a 15mm wrench, unscrew the nut from the lower ball joint. Use a 5mm Allen key to keep the ball joint from rotating. Finish unscrewing the nut on the end of the transmission. Brush the lower ball joint nut and spray it with penetrating oil. Loosen the lower ball joint nut using a ratchet and a 17mm socket. And remove the nut. Turn the brake disc inward to make this operation easier. Spray the area where the lower ball joint fits into the lower control arm with penetrating oil to facilitate removal. Using a jack, slightly lift the control arm, resting on the threaded rod of the lower ball joint. With the hammer, strike on the part of the control arm where the lower ball joint is inserted to loosen the assembly. Remove the jack. You can now disengage the lower ball joint from the control arm. You can now remove the CV axle from the hub by pulling on the wheel knuckle. It is now necessary to release the CV axle. Use a crowbar to pry the CV axle out of the gearbox. Then pull the CV axle out completely. It might prove difficult to extract. Take your time, using the technique shown in the video. Then wipe off the impurities on the seal with a paper towel. Hey, it's Alex from CarParts.com. If you enjoyed this video and want to support us, like, comment, and subscribe. Okay, back to work. You can order the CV axle used in the video on CarParts.com via the link in the description. Take the new CV axle and unscrew the nut supplied with it. Press the lower control arm to move the CV axle into the strut fork. Once in position, it is necessary to push firmly to fit it in its place. This might take some time. Once you've checked that the CV axle is well inserted, you can install the CV axle in the wheel hub. Roughly put the hub nut back in place. Grease the part of the lower control arm that will be in contact with the lower ball joint. Replace the lower ball joint in the control arm. Next, screw back on the nut until it's tight. Finish tightening using a torque wrench. Put the lower ball joint of the sway bar end link back in place. Then screw the nut back on. Finish tightening using a torque wrench. Put the strut fork retaining bolt back on the lower control arm, then screw the nut back on until it makes contact. To avoid damaging the bushings, you need to tighten the bolt holding the strut fork to the lower control arm in the vehicle on the ground position. Lift the wheel knuckle with the jack until the original measurement between the center of the wheel and the wheel arch is reached. Once at a distance, finish tightening the bolt with the torque wrench. Remove the jack. Then you will be able to put the wheels back on your vehicle. Put your vehicle back on the ground before properly fixing the wheels in place. You can purchase the parts we used here by visiting our website at carparts.com. Finish tightening the hub nut once the vehicle is on the ground using a torque wrench. Lift the front of your vehicle. You can now remove the wheel. Crimp the nut on the end of the transmission using a pin punch and a hammer. Then, you will be able to put the wheel back on your vehicle. Put the car back on the ground and block the wheel properly. Operation complete.